Here we are with Shantideva again. Hold on to your seat. He's going to tear us apart. First, he's going to tell us that you're not the center of the world like you think. And then he's going to tell us that you don't exist like you think you do either. And we came here to hear that. Yeah. And then in the middle of it, he sneaks in, and you have the Buddha nature. So then you think, okay, yeah, maybe. And then he pours on the other stuff some more. Okay. So let's begin visualizing the merit field and all the sentient beings around us. So, yeah, all the sentient beings, whoever, not just human beings too, but you can think of beings in all the six realms and what they're going through right now. You know, like we're sitting here very comfortable, and throughout the universe and just on this planet, people are undergoing so many different experiences and in so much mental confusion and fear about how to handle these different experiences. So, and we are too sitting in the middle of that mess. Okay, so to help ourselves and others, we're turning to refuge and generating bodhicitta. So all those beings in so many different places throughout the universe having their own experience right now. We are connected to all of them. So we shouldn't think, oh, they're a stranger. I don't know them. They live somewhere else. In fact, I don't even know if they exist or not. I mean, even these big creatures at the bottom of the sea, I've never seen them. Do I know they really exist? What about beings in other realms? So we may have that doubt. But we may also have some understanding that due to our actions, particularly our mental actions or motivations, that our mind can influence us to take such rebirths, can create such kinds of bodies. And so just like us, the beings in so many different realms, so many different experiences, they're all exactly like us. We're not separate and from them and unable to understand them or unable to relate. And in addition, they've all been our kind parents, previous lives. They've all helped us in one way or another through their other activities in previous lives and in this life and in all of our future lives too. We will receive help and aid from other sentient beings. So it's really rather unrealistic in our own mind to make a big gulf between me and them when there's so much similarity and when we've received so much benefit. So just as we try and create good conditions for ourselves, let's do that for others too. The best condition, of course, is attaining full awakening. And to help others with that, of course, we've got to attain it ourselves. And so with that motivation, we're going to greet Shantideva with a smile. So this week I received 2 emails from people here who had some very, very good questions. And so I thought to discuss their questions and hopefully open it up and get other people to share some of their ideas. How to put this? What I say in sharing my ideas, it's not the way everybody has to think, and I'm sure it will push some buttons, and some people won't like it. Or people will think that I don't have enough faith, or things like that. So, anyway, there are things we have to look at in our practice. So, I want to talk about them, especially because other people brought them up. Okay, so one was a question from Venerable Nawang. There you are. You aren't wearing blue anymore. I keep looking for you in blue. You weren't there. And the other was from Venerable Thubten. Your question, you rewrote it a little bit from what you said. Yeah. Okay, that's good. So I thought I would read, what people wrote, because they're expressing their thoughts, and then contribute, hopefully something that is worthwhile. Because both of these kind of yeah. Okay. So Venerable now just was saying, he was talking about how we started talking about the method to equalize self and others. And how Shantideva's way is more general, and in seeing how beings benefit us. It's not like the 7-point cause and effect method, in which we want to help them because they've been our parents and they've been kind to us and so on. Okay. Shantideva's one is they exist, they're exactly like us, and they've been kind to us, but it isn't a personal way so much, as it is with a friend or a family member or something like that. So he says that he was trying to figure out how the meditations on equalizing and exchanging self and others relate to the verses in Shantideva's text. And he said, I was easily able to find examples of similar ideas for all the points of the 9 points, except the point of the kindness of others, which is the 4th point of the 9. So I began reviewing the entire text for mention of the kindness of others. Okay. So there are, of course, many verses of the kindness of our enemies, and he listed them. There were a few indirect references to the kindness of others who aren't our enemies. Okay, and he had 2 example verses for that. But I couldn't find a single verse that mentions the kindness of others who are ordinary beings directly as the main purpose of the verse. Okay, there are, of course, verses about the kindness of our teachers and of holy beings. So have I missed something? So this little investigation caused me to reflect on why Shantideva would not have emphasized this, the kindness of others, as a reason to generate love and compassion for beings. Okay, and then he puts forth some ideas why, this is such an important point, and how come there's no verses that directly say, think about the kindness of others, just in the sense of whatever they're doing in society, whether you know them or not, that you're receiving benefit. There's, Shantideva, what have you just been eating, sleeping, and going to the bathroom? You didn't put any verses in about that. So he has some ideas, and I had some ideas too. So the first one was thinking of the kindness of our family and friends could increase our attachment to them. Definitely. Okay. And that's why when you look at the Theravada method, which is not really different from our method for generating in the 4 immeasurables, when you generate immeasurable love, and you don't do it towards somebody that you're very close to, because attachment usually arises, and then that becomes a hindrance. So Buddhaghosa usually advises a teacher or somebody who you respect that you're not real close to, so the attachment doesn't arise. Okay, so if we sat around and thought about the kindness of our friends and relatives, very easy that attachment comes. So that could be one reason he didn't mention it. But on the other hand, we've got to deal with that attachment sometime. And not just avoid the issue by not thinking about it. Because the people that we feel closest to are also the people that we get the angriest at, and the people we're most disappointed in. So they're not like always an object of attachment. Okay, but that's one reason that he could have it. The second one, Venerable Knowing thought about, was thinking of the kindness of only certain beings with whom we have a close relationship could hinder our ability to develop equanimity. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's what we do all the time, isn't it? Yeah. We think of the kindness of the people who are close to us. And we think of the kindness of the people who give us gifts, who remember our birthdays, who praise us, who tell us how wonderful we are. So thinking of their kindness again, yeah, it's not going to get us over the hump of our partiality and our bias, which you can see are really important elements of generating love and compassion in the Mahayana tradition, that they've got to be generated for every single sentient being, omitting none. Because if we omit even one from our bodhicitta, then we don't have bodhicitta, which means impossible to attain awakening. So it's really important to include everybody. His other idea was thinking of the kindness of others towards us specifically doesn't eliminate our self-focused attitude. Yeah, very true. Yeah. They were kind to me, therefore they're wonderful people. And I have love and affection for them. But if they show their kindness to somebody else, especially somebody I don't like, then I'm in big trouble. Okay. So all these reasons are still, they're showing how that partiality comes in. So he's saying maybe Shantideva didn't want us to get into that kind of partiality. My thought on this, about why he didn't mention it, is because the kindness of others and the way we depend on others is actually quite obvious. Yeah. And why does he need to talk about it when we experience it day in and day out? And then I thought some more about that. Why is he talking about it if we experience it? Then I thought, okay, was society like in ancient India? Yeah. You lived in your village, and the people there may not be related to each other, but they function together because they all depend on each other to stay alive in a village. There's no government that's going to come to your aid if there's an earthquake, if there's a flood, if there's a drought. You just, your whole way of being is interconnected with other people, and you help each other. If you're a farmer, you've got to help with what everybody's doing so that everybody can eat. Yeah. And I thought, well, how come for us this is such a big point, And because I see that I always talk a lot about this, about the kindness of others. Why, if Shantideva didn't think it important enough to mention, am I going on and on about it? Okay. And I think it has to do with the difference in our cultures. Okay. In Asian culture, your identity is as a member of a group. Yeah. You are part of that family. Just even talking about the kindness of your parents and so on, you grow up with that in an Asian family. Okay. And your identity is linked with that family. If you belong to a clan, your identity, you are linked with that whole clan or with that whole village in Tibet. If you were going to ordain, you went to the Kamsen, where all the monks were from your area of Tibet. Why? Well, you're interrelated already. Yeah. In the West, and this is probably a function too of, the religion here, but also the industrialization here and a lot of the social philosophies here, especially capitalism. Our identity is get ahead for yourself, work for yourself, be unique. Yeah. Aren't we all supposed to be unique? Yeah. And we're supposed to, it starts when we're very young. You know, we've got to have our favorite color when we're 4 years old, because if we have our favorite something, then we are different from other people, you know, and we will get gifts in our favorite color. I mean, and you get gold stars. I mean, you're a little kid and you're going to daycare and you get gold stars if you were good. So there's so much emphasis on standing out, but in a conformist way. Yeah, you've got to stand out and be unique, but conform to the way a whole group of people is standing out. You get what I mean? It's like, yeah. So you've got to be in with the latest group that is challenging everything. Yeah, you know what I mean? So this emphasis on always being unique, my ideas. Yeah, school writing about my ideas and my this and my that, and having to, you know, like in Singapore, you have to have a CV when you're like 4 years old to get into the good kindergarten so that you can get into a good elementary school and a good middle school and a good high school and then go to university. Yeah. And then if you have a university degree, especially one from another country, then you've had it for life. You're on the top tier. You know, you have social recognition. You've made it. You're good. You're rich. And then you can do the same thing for your kids. Okay. Right? Yeah. So, you know, that whole emphasis of sticking out that we sticking out in a good way, you know, and looking out for ourselves. In capitalism, what do? You look out for yourself. And if, you know, you can make the extra buck, you do. And yeah, you do what you can get away with till somebody, you know, calls you out on it. And so it our conditioning so much in this culture is I look out for myself. What's that phrase? Like, you know, if I don't look out for myself, nobody else will. So we've got to look out for ourselves first. Yeah. And so because that is so prominent in this culture, then we need a lot of teachings and a lot of meditation, thinking about how we exist in relationship to everybody else and how we've received benefit from everybody else. Yeah. Because, you know, if you're used to seeing other people as competitors, you don't see them as you know, benefiting you or as kind. You see them as wanting to do better than you. Yeah. And then we, of course, want to do better than them. So, so that's, you know, one idea. Maybe for Shantideva, you know, at his time, it was so obvious. Yeah, how if you're going to stay alive, you need other people. But now, you know, even though the same is true, we need other people. But when we go to the grocery store and get this and that, or we go to the clothing store and buy things, we don't think about the people involved in producing those goods. Yeah. And I remember when somebody started at one point talking about the sweatshops in Bangladesh. It's like, oh, yeah, I started looking more at the labels in my clothes and and the furniture and the carpet and everything else. And where was this made? And what was the conditions of the people making it? And I was like, oh, I had never thought about it. My usual thought was, do I like this article or not? Is it useful or not? I didn't think about, you know, all the people involved in producing that and their experience. And when there was a big fire in one of the sweatshops in Bangladesh, it really woke me up. It's like, oh, these are the people who are making some of the things that I wear. Yeah. And then I remembered, oh, yeah, my own grandma worked in a sweatshop in New York. It's like, oh, this is really the kindness of people and their experience, and how often these people are overlooked and taken advantage of. Yeah. The migrant workers, same thing. So, yeah, so that was one idea I had about, does that make some sense? Okay, so I'd like to hear if other people have more ideas about why Shantideva didn't mention this directly.
What you were saying about culture made me wonder, how do we reflect on the kindness of others and come to the correct Dharma conclusion? Because of the force of my attachment to family, or I've been thinking a lot about Chinese ancestor worship. Yeah, I did grow up with a deity culture, but it's like you're responsible to everybody in the same surname going back to the village, and once a year you go and you pay respect to them. On the plane, I met this woman who is Filipino, and her daughter is marrying a Chinese man. And the mother-in-law is so upset. She made her son kneel in front of all the ancestors because he's not marrying a Chinese person. So I kind of get where that comes from, and it's terrifying. So if you don't have the right way of thinking about how to repay the kindness of your parents and your and the ancestors or whatever, you get into this hole of obligation and guilt, and it's not at all actually repaying their kindness. Yeah, I've dug that hole for myself many times, and so to have some distance from that is, for me, is deeply necessary to work out what is the correct conclusion. Otherwise, I would not be ordained. Yeah, I would have 2 children right now.
Yeah, yeah, and you would be telling them to make sure to do all the funeral rites when you die, and to teach their children to make offerings on your grave. And yeah. Mm-hmm.
Kindness that we receive from family and friends is usually more like this life assistance, it's material things. And so maybe Shantideva wants us to get out of that mindset, think more about the spiritual kindness that we've received, see kindness more in that sense.
Yeah, that's when you think about the kindness of your teachers and, people like that. If you're thinking of the kindness of the people who make the roads, then again, it's things of this life, but it's people we don't know who are putting their energy into that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about how easy it was growing up to blame parents and blame the people around us of what they've done. So it's like, for me anyhow, I had to figure that all out and get that clear and quit doing that and generate inside the clarity about the kindness that they offered me, starting with life and then from there. And that's, to me, the jumping off place then to start enlarging that idea of kindness of others to others around and strangers and the people that provide services, etc. So if I hadn't done that initial work with the close ones, with my parents,
Yeah.
I would never have been able to go to the next step. I think I'd be stuck in that.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe people, the method of the 7-point cause and effect method may be very good for people, because you two are saying something very similar, and it would be very good for you to see that, that the people close to us have also been kind. Because I think in some way, dear Mr. Freud, everything, all of our troubles, why our parents did this or didn't do that. And then, from there you get the inner child movement, because your parents did this or they didn't do that. And so, like you said, we have to work out the issues with the people we're close to. But, and then spread that, that ability to feel appreciation and affection to others as well.
And I think, too, part of the process also is, after a while, to get your mind out of just this life and start thinking of past and future. And then that allows one to bring in all of the participants that benefited.
Yeah. Yeah. So that could be another reason, maybe why, no, to really see the kindness of others. And that way we have to work through the whole thing of rebirth. Yeah. And have some understanding of rebirth. Otherwise, kindness in the past and future lives, we just gloss over. Yeah. But if you really think of, what Geshe-la was talking about last week, did you notice how he went through all 6 perfections and saying how they were all necessary for even the precious human life that we have now, let alone everything in the future? And, thinking about future, what we did in the past lives, what will become of us in the future lives. Yeah, then of course opens us to think of, who did we practice generosity with? Who did we practice ethical conduct with, and so on.
I was wondering if it's part of their monastic trainings in that culture of, I think he's very highly born from the king class.
Mm.
And, that emphasis not to go back, because Indian families are also very sticky.
Yep.
And especially if your son is leaving, I think they are more hysterical than the Chinese, possibly.
We could have a competition.
Well, I think the Indian mothers are scarier. The Chinese mother needs space.
Well, the fathers too, Yeah.
I read something once that I really felt was very true for me anyway, that relates to this. And it was 2 points. The first one doesn't, but the second does, but I think they're both true. The first was that in our culture, people from the middle class tend to have romantic notions about how relationships should be. And they also tend to feel entitled to things. Yeah. And the first one, I think, is, we never grew up with child marriage or arranged marriages or any of that, all the music we listen to. But the second one, I really think is very much related to this point. Like, why should I thank anyone else? I'm entitled to all this stuff. Everything comes our way. We're in the middle. We do our work, everything comes, the water runs, we have our new clothes every year for school. Who's there to thank?
Yeah. Very much we're entitled to it. Yeah, so where did that come from in our culture, that sense of entitlement? Yeah, is that part of the Industrial Revolution and then the workers' movement, because the workers didn't want to be exploited, so they felt we're entitled to some of the profit of the company too. We're entitled to good working conditions. And that kind of entitlement's completely valid. But I wonder if, that set us up.
Taking over somebody else's land.
Oh, that's going a little bit too far. Yeah. I mean, there's sticking up for your rights, and then there's, the sense of entitlement. But in old cultures, there was no sense of my rights. Yeah. There wasn't a sense of these are my rights.
I would have to think that the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant paradigm, that the whole idea about creator, savior, redemption, that there's an exclusivity that seems to have fallen into the white race mostly, that says, God will take care of you. If you believe in him and you follow his, commandments, you have a special place in the world. You have special domination in the world. You have a special, whatever. Because it's because what we're looking at now in our country with this incredible paranoia about this race critical theory thing is that the white folks, they're feeling undermined because the entitlement is getting challenged by people who are asking for a fair share.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of just this idea that we were born special under the love of God, and somehow whether you were raised like that or not, it's kind of endemic in our thinking that white folks have kind of, at least in this culture, have special privileges due to the fact that Jesus loves us. He wasn't white. I mean, he got changed.
Oh,
I mean, the adaptation of Jesus
Yeah.
make it work for us, I think, is, because I always felt like even though I was inherently evil, I was also kind of special. I was inherently flawed. I was also kind of special.
Okay, just a couple more comments, and then I want to go on to the next question here. Okay, Whitney.
I would. I would suggest that if you think you're special in the eyes of God, there's no reason to be thankful for other people because you're better than they are. So as long as you think you're better than other people, there's no gratitude.
Okay. So,
I think it's also an Asian culture thing whereby I've been speaking with Venerable Chodron about this. Like when we live in community, we don't just think of ourselves, we think of the whole group as a big picture.
yeah.
And then like even when we are walking on the road, the lights came off, we will just pick it up and fix it. We won't say just mind your own business and we just walk.
Yeah.
I think it's like we work together. And also there's a difference between how they use the lead here, like you are the lead, so you tell people what to do, how to do it. But in the Asian culture, it's like you are the lead, we do it together. So there is this sense of togetherness, but compared to here, it's more like, oh, you it's a hierarchy thing more compared to a group thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I see that difference here.
Yeah. Okay, she's burning back there. This will be the last one.
It's from Venerable Jamba.
Uh-huh.
She's saying, why doesn't he talk about depending on others? And she says that he was speaking to monastics when he gave this treatise, and when one ordains, it becomes very obvious at one point that your growth as a monastic depends on other monastics and practitioners. Their precepts involve, to the most part, other people that we live and relate with, and learning to live with different people of different cultures makes us grow. And then she says, he also teaches that patience can only be developed with others. And this way we will become the person we really want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's true. When you become a monastic, then, you're living in community, and our precepts concern our relationships with people in the community and so on. So that stretches us, which is why you have outbursts of your self-centered thought. Yeah. Anybody here? It's like, why is there this precept? Why is there this guideline, this rule? It goes against what I want to do. Yeah. And so that's part of the rock tumbler, isn't it? Is that idea needs to get knocked out of the ballpark for us to really practice. And it's difficult because it's well entrenched in our minds. Yeah. So when you encounter somebody who just looks at you and says, no, then you can maybe tap them on the shoulder and say, are you having are you being assaulted by your feeling of entitlement right now? Remember, that's an enemy. Just give it up. What do you say? Wouldn't it be nice if we could take that in? If, somebody says that to us, so if we could say, yeah, you're right. I do feel it. And I am entitled. No, that's not something I'm trying to generate in my mind anymore. Okay. Then the second email I received, it's about a different topic. Okay. So saying there is still a lack of clarity on my part about making prayers as a Buddhist and making prayers as a non-Buddhist. Because we talked about, we talked about that last time. And, so the King of Prayers is a clear example of a Buddhist prayer or aspiration. It describes aspirations of cultivating virtue, benefiting others, purifying, becoming a Buddha to benefit others in this and future lives. So it makes kind of, those are we call them prayers, they're actually aspirations, but they really, there's something that enhance our practice and really uplift us to try and really get some feeling for what those aspirations are and to lead our life in the direction of aspiring as the holy beings did. Okay. At other times, making prayers or aspirations for others to be relieved of their suffering seems like we are calling out to holy beings to do something while we, the requester and the requestee, do nothing. Okay, so may so-and-so recover from this illness. May, my business go well. May my kids marry the appropriate people. May I get the promotion. May I have a good relationship. We have, when we pray for people, there's these categories of things that we aspire for them. What is it? Good health, good
Peaceful, calm minds and hearts.
What?
Peaceful, calm mind and heart.
God.
Peaceful, calm.
Oh yeah, peaceful, kind heart. Clarity and wisdom. Yeah, removing obstacles. Huh? Yeah, harmonious relationships. Wealth also. I mean, that's one of the main things. It's not written because you don't want to say that, but that appears too greedy. So harmonious relationships. That to have a harmonious relationship, I have to make a lot of money. So it really means make money. And then, okay. But her idea is that we're dedicating for things for people where it's just like asking the three jewels to make this happen. Okay. And in the meantime, we're not doing anything. We're not aspiring for anything. We're not, our practice isn't being stimulated. It's just worldly things. And, essentially, may people have all the worldly things that they want. May they be happy in that way. And so saying that's quite different than something like the King of Prayers. So there is a fine line here. In moments that it sounds like asking for miracles, pray to Tara and you will get your visa. Yeah. Or, pray to Tara. Somebody, pray to Tara that my upcoming test turns out, cancer free or whatever it is. That's a funny one because whatever's in your body, is not going to change because you pray that your test, that there's a test that shows it's not there. Yeah. Okay. Earlier this week, we did the celestial mansion practice that promises this. Quote, good to recite this mantra before going to see important people or participating in important meetings where you want the people present at the meeting to listen to you and do what you say. Yeah, what's the mantra? This mantra also helps in business and it brings wealth. And we're told to say this mantra, and then that, just by saying that mantra, abracadabra, all these good things are going to happen. Okay. So would you share some examples of the language that you use when making prayers or aspirations? Okay, so I have my own special feeling towards some of these requests. Okay, so like I said, many people may not agree, and some people may go, "Oh, thank goodness." Okay, okay. First, to give the big picture, I think that in every culture, and human beings, by and large, they want outside help. And when things get too difficult in this world, then if you think of a creator or a governor of the universe, a manager of the universe, then, you have a special line, to the complaint department and the request department, and that somehow they have the power to make happen what, isn't going to happen otherwise. So some people actively believe that. Some people, I think it's just the desperation of how horrible samsara is, that they don't know, there exists nirvana, there exists full awakening, there exists states beyond this. So they don't know that that's possible, and they don't know that this whole mess is caused by our defilements. So they appeal to somebody who is higher, who they impute all these powers onto, and who can make stuff happen and control things that we can't control. Okay? So I think that's kind of a human tendency for beings in samsara, that we do this. And especially if you grew up in a theistic religion, this is the core of it, is making those kind of prayers for this and that and the other thing. and meeting the prerequisites for going to heaven. And you got to praise God. Yeah, yeah, right. And give him the credit for everything that happens to you that's good. And whenever things happen that aren't good, you give the credit to the devil, to Satan. And many people, yeah, if it's not Satan, it's your neighbor. So how do what is actually going on in Buddhist when we make prayers, and what's actually happening when we request a puja? Yeah, and you request a puja at a monastery. The people doing the puja don't know you. Yeah, they don't know if you may ask them to pray for somebody who passed away, or pray for your good business. I mean, this happens all the time. Pray for somebody's successful business. But the people doing the puja don't know you, and they may not be thinking of you when they're doing the chanting. They may be thinking of the bread and tea that's coming. Yeah. So, yeah, what does it mean? And when we're asked, recite this sutra so many times, your teacher's life, to make them live long, recite this text so many times, or say this mantra so many times. It does sound like magic, doesn't it? And some people say yes, some people say no. But, I told you about in Singapore how, somebody asked me if I could give them their lucky number, because that's what monks and nuns do. And there was a period of, a couple of centuries where there was always a very hot Rinpoche in the Chinese court. What was the name of that emperor? Konglung emperor. Anyway, one of them. And the Tibetans, the emperor would ask the Tibetans to do pujas for the success of their military expeditions, for the wealth of the empire, for to calm a rebellion, or whatever. So what's going on here? And I was thinking, I don't remember reading in any text the Buddha saying that that you should recite these things for somebody's specific worldly purpose. Maybe I'm missing something, but there are especially Mahayana sutras where they talk about the virtue you accumulate from writing the sutra out. Now that I can see, you create some virtue, because when you're writing the sutra out, hopefully you're thinking about it. You're also making the text available for somebody else to read and to benefit from it. That's what they used to do before you would print books for free distribution, is, you write it out. So yeah, there I can see somebody's creating virtue. And when they dedicate, you dedicate for all sentient beings, but you dedicate specifically for, somebody who's sick or whatever. And in my mind, dedicating for somebody who's sick or somebody who just died is very different than dedicating so somebody's business can go well, or they have a good marriage or whatever. On the other hand, when people, because we get requests to pray like that a lot. So when I do dedicate for those people, I always sneak in another dedication that they didn't ask for, which is that they meet the Dharma that they have faith in the Dharma, that they meet qualified teachers, and that they practice well. So they're not asking me for that dedication, but I sneak that one in. Yes, I pray for their business, and may they meet the Dharma, and may they develop renunciation of samsara and so forth. Okay. So that's how I do it. But also, this thing about doing pujas and ceremonies and prayers and things like that. Very often in Asia, well, here too, thinking that my prayers will make somebody else have a good rebirth. And like I always say, help them to create virtue while they're alive. But I really see this all the time, that somebody does some kind of practice or they do some chanting, but in their lives, but when somebody dies, then it's full on, and doing a lot of chanting and making a lot of offerings and so on. After the person has died, thinking that, well, I'm not sure what they think. To tell you the truth, they could be thinking I'm creating virtue by making these offerings and dedicating it for those people. They could be thinking like, well, if I give an offering, the Buddha's going to do something for me. That kind of business mentality. Yeah. And then you have the whole dynamic, too, of this is a big way that monasteries get income. Okay? And so that factors into it. Yeah, in terms of, it's a big way that income comes into the monastery. But also from the side of the people who request prayers, the ones I've seen, because I've been there, in different situations where people come and request a lama or request a monastery to make prayers or do a puja. And they always bring an offering. Yeah. They don't just write an email and say, please pray for so-and-so, or please do this puja or whatever. They always make an offering. And I think that's because there's some understanding of karma that you create merit when you make offerings to the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Okay. So you create that merit, and then they do the puja or make the prayers. So all of that together, your creation of merit, their prayers or puja can go and help that person. When I think about it deeply, and they've done some studies that when people know that other people are praying for them, they do better in recovering from surgery or from an illness. So, does that depend more on the person making the prayer or on the person who's ill, knowing that other people are behind them and rooting for them, Because I think when we know that other people care about us, then, our mind is more peaceful, we're less afraid, so you can recover easier, or more quickly. In terms of reciting this and that, bringing wealth to the Dharma center, the monastery, I feel very uncomfortable with that. And this is the difficulty you have with when you wanted to invite generosity in Asia and doing things the way that they're used to. And I come in and say, no, we're not doing that. Okay. One famous thing is in Asia, if you're building a temple, or at least in Singapore, many other places, you get people to give a certain amount for a brick. Yeah. And then they can write their name on the brick. And that becomes one of the building materials for the temple. And so, from the side of the person who's giving, they feel, hopefully they feel I'm making an offering to the Sangha and it will build a temple which will benefit people, But we don't know if they're thinking that or if they're just thinking, well, yeah, I want to give, and it's kind of good luck. And, if I have some bricks with my name on it and the name of my family on it, that's good. Something good will come to the family for that. The people could be thinking who knows what when they do this. Yeah. But there is an open door for worldly thinking. Yeah. So how much people really know how to think when they do this? Is something to think about. And, when it's, recite this so many times. Personally, some people love that. They get a message, recite this text so many times and it will bring this, this, and this. Yeah, you get that message. I don't like that, okay? The reason is because I have other virtuous things that I want to do, and I don't want to spend my time reciting a mantra or reciting a text over and over and over again. I want to, meditate on this and that, or do this or that kind of, something. Yeah, but I've got to spend my time doing this because somebody said to do it, but I don't get anything out of it. Of course, that shows you the level of my mind. Maybe if I, did these things and, oh, yes, I'm really, yeah, my teacher's going to live long because I'm reciting this sutra, this mantra again and again and again. But wouldn't my teacher live long if I'm putting into practice what he taught? Why does it have to be just reciting this X number of times? What about just taking seriously the teachings that I've received and trying to practice them? Yeah. And when people request things, they never request that you sit there and meditate silently for a certain period of time on a topic. They never do that. You're always supposed to be chanting something or reciting something as if, that's the only way. But, and you can get understanding from chanting and reciting, and doing that in a group gives a certain amount of energy that's really wonderful. Okay. But wouldn't it be nice if, your teacher said, I'll live long if you all meditate, or not all live long, like they have a choice over it, but, it will help, extend my life if the students meditate on the disadvantages of self-centeredness and the benefits of cherishing others, So I want everybody every day to sit down, for 2 months and 15 minutes every day, meditate on that. How come we don't get requests like that? For me personally, sitting down and meditating on that, I think would change my mind much more than doing a puja. But that's just me, Maybe, other people are different. And when you like that too. But, and when I suggest that sometimes, doing these pujas, okay, if somebody has died recently, their mind's in the bardo. So when I get requests to pray for these people, I don't go, may this, may that. I kind of give instructions like I'm talking to them. You know me. Tell everybody what to do. Yeah. But I sit there and I go, Swamiji, just relax. Let go of everything. Don't cling on to friends or family or your body or your position. Just let go. Take your compassionate heart. Make a strong aspiration to be born where you can benefit sentient beings, where you can meet the Dharma and fully qualified Mahayana and Vajrayana teachings and teachers, and practice well and have faith. And, it's like, in my mind, it's like I'm giving them instructions and talking to them. And I find that much more fulfilling from my side than to say, may they have a good rebirth. Or, I recited such and such 20 times, I recited 20 malas of the 100-syllable Bodhisattva, okay. So I'm wondering if this is just, differences in personalities, because, in so many ways, through quite a number of years, I kept feeling like, I don't have very much faith. And my Dharma brothers and sisters, from the same teachers, they have so much faith. They get a request to do these mantras, they're right at it. Request to read these texts, they do it. They're always, my guru's a Buddha, my guru's a Buddha. Oh, look what they did. This is so wonderful. They did that, da, 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 and singing the praises and everything. And I'm sitting there going, yeah, teach me something. Yeah. And I'm not all enraptured with, this and that, and going around, saying to everybody how wonderful they are, and reciting all these things, and feeling like I don't have very much faith. All my Dharma friends are like so full of faith doing all of this. What's wrong with me? And then years and years and years went by, and then I looked around again, and most of them had disrobed, or the lay people I didn't see anymore. I was not the only one, but there were just a few of us still, involved in making Dharma our life full time. And I thought, maybe I don't lack faith. If I did, I wouldn't be here today. But my faith doesn't look like everybody else's faith. Yeah. And I kind of sound like a heretic saying some of these things, So, so let's have more of what other people think right now. And I'd really like Geshe-la to...
So you all heard me.
You don't have to go first, Geshe-la. You can if you want to, but
I did with loud laughter.
Yeah.
Okay. I usually see doing the pujas. I have myself been in a situation where I have so much commitments to do, and they are taking much. Yeah, I have myself been in a situation where I felt like, oh, there's so much commitments to do that I just barely do them, but not with the intended purpose behind it, which is to revisit bodhicitta 6 times a day, 6 times 24 hours, and renew the spirit of refuge 6 times a day. So there is the purpose behind it, but the commitments are so many that you hardly get any one of them to kind of really do it in a very sunk in way. So I have found out my own way of covering that by doing one very deep and kind of leisurely way, and then do the rest quickly by remembering what I had done before, kind of quickly remembering it. But on the whole, I see prayers as something that will be best utilized if we know and we are there what we are doing and bring our mind into it. Then we are naturally developing our mind as well as generating merit. And that merit is now your own hard-earned merit. Now you can dedicate. And so that's what you dedicate and can have the effect, can have the benefit. And not so much requesting, please do this, please do this, please do this, but generally kind of going through the refuge and bodhicitta like that, and then as looking in them as an inspiration, which is also a way of generating merit, and then you dedicate it. But not everyone can do that. So some could be just barely able to read, but not have the background. They could read, but at least come with a faith, with a good intention. And that itself is a little bit of a merit that you can then dedicate. And then, as Venerable was sharing in terms of people who are in the Partho state, almost like instructing, many of the rituals themselves convey that. Except we say them very quickly, and so there is no guarantee whether they understand it. No, particularly if the deceased one are not familiar with the puja, then they may not understand, and that's not the time when you really get anything over their head, right? So I suggest taking time in kind of expanding on it, in saying it in your own ways. If you happen to know their language, say it in their language, like that. So that's a way of doing it. At the very least, one generate the good spirit and the merit and dedicate that. So that's what His Holiness usually says. Don't just pray. Prayers won't work like that. And some people confronted him saying, I've been praying for your long life. Do you mean that those do not mean anything? So, but then he wouldn't kind of just push them away. He would say, what prayer do you do? What idam do you do? And he takes interest and interest in it because it's very much dependent on how you do it. Otherwise, if you do it, then the 6th session yoga makes perfect sense. It's like having bodhicitta running throughout 24 hours, renewing it. And then everything it touches turns into gold. And then you dedicate it. You have not just iron coins, but golden coins to dedicate. It will really go very far. Thank you.
One other thing I wanted to add is sometimes I think these the rituals for praying for people who have died like 5 years ago or 10 years ago or whatever, and some people really, these rituals are quite important to them. But I think that person's already been reborn. Yeah? And so you're praying for the good life of the person that you knew, and that person died. They no longer exist. There's a continuity, but the continuity isn't even what you think because they've been dead for many, many years. And so I think also that the idea of many of these rituals, especially around death, are for the benefit of the grieving people, not for the benefit of those who have died. Because in some way, the people who have died are like, they're completely left out of it. In some way, because what is the big thing? Everybody gets together and you chant and you understand whatever you understand, and it alleviates your guilt for how you've treated that person when they were alive. And it gives you a good feeling of, okay, well, things happen while we were alive, but at least now I'm making up for it. So I think a lot of it is for the benefit of the living, and I don't know how much it actually reaches the people who are dead. In any case, I think prayers directed towards people who are dead, I think it kind of maybe gives them a lot, like a little, a better environment in their mind, because I think you can communicate, not always with email and voices, but mentally, and so the energy from the good wish can actually get to somebody and help them. But doing these many elaborate things, that cost a lot, and huge pujas and things like that for people who've died a long time ago. So I think it's actually, these things are for the living. Yeah. And going to the grave and cleaning the grave of, that person's, who knows where they've been born right now. And I don't think they care about the grave, but I need to connect with them. And this is my way of connecting with them. But I phrase it in this way of, so that I feel like I'm doing something good. That's the same reason why people die, and then no matter how you related to them when they were alive and your family, when they die, you get a really expensive casket, and then that shows how much you love them and how much you value them. And so anybody been in the rooms at a funeral home where you go shopping for caskets? Yeah, a couple of you. Yeah, it's very interesting, They take your, and here's this one, pure mahogany wood. Look how beautiful and smooth it is. And it has brass handles, But this one over here, same mahogany, it has silver handles. And look at the cloth that will surround your loved one. We can make it silk or satin or whatever. And it's a business. It's expensive to die in America. You have to pay a lot for a funeral, and pay a lot for the ground space. And, and people feel like they're doing it for the dead, but I think it's more for the living.
I guess what I first thought about is, for me, prayers are very personal, mm-hmm. and have changed over the years. And sometimes I think that if I make a prayer that includes the whole thing, everything, then it's kind of, I'm more in line with reality, the dependent arising everything. I think that can be powerful. And I think if a person has a huge mind, maybe they would know that. But where I am right now, I don't know that I know that. But I have a belief that if I can do a prayer that is very personal and very heartfelt, and that takes into consideration the whole scene, mm-hmm. then the chance of that having an effect is greater, I think. Mm-hmm.
I agree about that part about transactions and those needs to, and it's very sneaky, the transaction. I do something and then I get something out of it, and it's reinforcing the I, the self that gets bigger. And then also in my mind, there's so much that I do not understand. There's so much that I don't know. Like in America, not so much, but when I'm in Asia, it's in my face from the time I grew up. You know, you get mediums that go into trance, and it's all around you, and all this ghost, and it's like that. The things that you cannot see, your five senses cannot. I mean, you cannot see directly, but there's a sense of existence that is beyond what is immediately visible, audible, and then so that my mind has a space for these things that I don't see them as supernatural, but I see them as like something more than. It's like when they talk about people flying. Is the way I grew up. It's not something supernatural. It's the ability to manipulate your winds to extent where you can do that. And I see that in the cats, right? The ability to jump so high is because parts of their wings have been released, and that the ability is natural. So it's an extension of something that is considered natural. And then like for prayers, the connection is something that I do not quite understand, but I don't reject. For like Venerable Thubten was talking about the Carmelite sisters praying for the unborn babies and how a lot of their prayers actually have very good results, and those are things. 100%. Well, so that kind of things is very easy for me to accept. I mean, just because of the way I've grown up, it's just the things that you are unfamiliar with, and you get repeated, and people believe, and a lot of it is superstition, but then it widens the mind so much that there is space to accept like the unknown, until I understand it. So for me, and then prayers, like Lama Chopa, when I started, like, what? 1.5 hours of this? But then now, like, the words, starts to get meaning as I learn the Dharma. And it's, the beauty of it comes slowly, and the meaning of it comes. So it's like I can see even from like the beginning of when first time I do Lama Chopa, it's like, when are they going to hand out the offerings? To now, like, it's just little bits of it. It's a trickle, it's like a drop, little bit. So I have a lot of confidence in my mind's ability to slowly understand. It takes a long time, but so for me, prayers is like even if it's something that is I'm resisting, a lot of time is because of the unfamiliarity of it.
Familiarization has a big piece in this.
There's a group of us who are reciting the King of Prayers for Bill, who just died. And for me, that's a prayer that was one of my favorites. I just like to recite it frequently or regularly because of the effect that it has on my mind. It's so vast that it gets me outside of myself, and the bigger picture of the situation that we're in samsara comes to life, and also what I'm moving towards, where I want to go, what really matters. And so it's not so much reciting that for someone who's died in terms of I think that's going to necessarily affect them greatly, but it's like this is a way to honor that, pay respect or repay their kindness in a way for what that person has shown me by how I'm going to practice going forward. So that's more where these prayers, or that's how it affects, I have confidence in how that prayer affects my mind in terms of my practice. And therefore it's a meaningful use of my time. Whereas I think if people were gathering and were reciting something that I wasn't so connected to, I might not choose to spend my time that way because of the impact that it had on my mind wasn't the same. So I think I agree with Venerable Jigme that it's very personal. And yeah. And I know sometimes when there's these requests to recite this so many times, or recite this prayer so many times, it's like, well, it gives you something to do. And if you're not quite sure how to spend your time, at least you know what to do.
Yeah.
You can pour your energy into that. Whereas, like you said, you've got many virtuous projects that you want to do. It's like, well, great. Some people don't have that, but they get this thing. It's like, oh, I can focus on that.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
I think that I agree with actually Venerable Pema about there being things that I can't see and don't know. But I think we all have had the experience, probably, of a couple of times in dire situations, really starting to do the praises to Tara, and things changed that helped tremendously. Right? So I didn't pray, Tara, please save me. It wasn't so specific, but I can attribute some of the conditions shifting because of the maybe urgency or fervency or good karma relationship there. So I kind of think about the power of the mind being we know it's very powerful. And I think some of those prayers about the healing are also people who don't know they are prayed for get better. That's what was so phenomenal about that particular series of tests. So that I feel like we're contributing to the conditions, pure and simple. If someone has the karma to be benefited, if I have the karma to be benefited from that kind of request, then that is part of what helps that virtue to ripen in a positive way. And also, I think the thing about the pujas, like when we do the Medicine Buddha puja, and there's 60 people online, sometimes now I have them unmute themselves so that we're all doing the mantra together, and there's just a cacophony of it, but you can hear this imagining the sound covering the universe, and the feeling of our own kind of aspiration for everyone to be well and healthy is increased. I find it increasing by the fact of sharing it together. So I also think that's part of the power of doing those pujas.
It binds a community together.
Yeah, with the right mind. Or when we were doing those Shakyamuni Buddha practice marathons to dedicate merit for the Buddha Hall, people came on and just practiced their hearts out so that at least together we're generating merit. And does it help the Buddha Hall? Well, I don't know, but a wave of support.
Yeah.
The wave of support is huge. And we do tell people, the Buddha said, the merit you generate from helping to build this temple will go with you as long as that temple is being used. Right. And I believe that energy goes forward.
The Buddha said that. Does that mean the way to make that happen is only by saying mantra? Of course not. Yeah.
But I think it's also how we pray. I went to see my aunt who is dying, right? And I had such a short time with her, and she has faith in Amitabha culturally, even though the family is not Buddhist. So we can do Amitabha practice together, visualize the golden light. But at the same time, I'm thinking my dad and my two cousins are there, and they're thinking I'm a superstitious person. But I can make an aspiration. I don't have the conditions right now to tell you who is Amitabha. This is not the time for me to tell you, if you see dependent arising, you see the Buddha. It's like not gonna work, but I can make prayers like, may I be able to explain this to you? May I be able to explain, what does it mean to remember the Buddha? Why does that help you? Yeah. Why does that lead you to Pure Land? The real miracle for me is that my cousins showed up for the public talk when I gave it. I'm like, oh my goodness. They came. Yeah. That's the next step, right? Yeah. To slowly piece it together. So like, Venerable Pema said, we plant the seed at the level we and others are at, right. And then someday.
Right. Yeah. Actually, one time I was working with one young man who was dying, and Rinpoche gave him a practice to do. And so I kind of asked a little bit about that. And I don't know if Rinpoche was joking. I can't remember his exact words, but the meaning was kind of like, well, we're giving them this to do, and it makes them feel better. But the real benefit is, because I was helping him, the real benefit is you and the other people who understand what it means, they're deriving the benefit from it, not the person that you're asking to recite something so many times or do such and such, So it's kind of like a way to trick people to create virtue, It is, because they won't do it for themselves. They don't have any faith that way. But if it's for somebody else, well, maybe. So I'll do that. And then that opens their mind or whatever. And for other people, they hear that and they turn away and walk out. So it's like very individual.
Someone who sends in prayer requests frequently, she explains, when I ask, well, not unusually frequently, but she explains that when I ask for the Abbey for prayers, is coming from a place of respect for who you are in my life and in the world, and hoping that the connection created when you pray for my loved ones helps them find the Dharma in future lives. All the while, I'm doing what I can to pray and benefit them too, acting also as a connection to the Dharma. Having the Abbey pray, it feels like there's extra power behind what I'm doing.
Just briefly, from the side of doing the prayers here, I think it's always a very nice time for me to think about all the other people, because when we're doing the practice here, we're living here, we're doing all the things, we're living our life, but then just thinking about all the other people who request things or who need things, and that just pulls me out of my self-centered thinking. And in that sense, for my own practice, I do like to think of people and to especially make time for that.
Okay.
I do remember in one of the texts, particularly this text called, I used to have an English, sometimes it's called the Scripture of Examples by Potova, which is a series of examples on Lamrim. I think their commentary on that quotes Atisha in explaining how prayers work on the basis of connection. And that connection would be either a material connection. That's why when they offer something, now they create a connection. It's like a new connection line has been established. Now communication can take place in terms of marriage, transferring, and whatnot. And then the other one is biological relationship. And then the other one is spiritual, religious relationship. So because of those relationships, the prayers that others do can benefit. And it says somehow, because in a way, from a Buddhist perspective, we are all connected, right? It is quite interesting to see, even evolutionarily, we're all connected. We come from one ancestor. But in a way, we're all connected. So there should be a kind of a, a limit in terms of where there's a connection, how far that connection could go and benefit. So it's such as 7 lives, 7 generations of, within 7 generations of connection, be that through biological or through monetary, material, or through spiritual, then yes, prayers can benefit them. Of course, when done properly, depending on that, the degree of benefit will increase. But I just recall to that. Thank you.
think it does differ a lot according to the family you're brought up in, the culture you're brought up in. Because I was brought up in a very scientific one, and it was like, you know.
Was a question that I had, because in the Lam Chomo they mentioned blood relation, connection, and also spiritual connection. But if you go back to the idea of all sentient beings has been my mother since beginner's time, how does this fit in? Yeah, and then second one is that there's this I'm not sure is it superstitious or what. They say that if you dedicate a merit, you received 7 merit and they receive 1. But I'm always having this question of what is the basis? Yeah.
That's a good question. You have these kinds of statements, and what is the source? And what's the reason behind that? How can you show that? Yeah. Or, again, is this something that keeps a family bound together? Is it something good for the individual growing up thinking, oh, there's all these ancestors before me, and it's because they did this and they did that I have the fortune that I have now, so therefore paying respect to them or making offerings to them is reciprocating. Yeah, and so people feel like that. Oh, yeah, the relative is getting it. Yeah, and whether they're actually getting it or not, it helps the person who's making the offering.
One thing I appreciate about the Jewish faith that I learned through my cousins is how much they have these kind of rituals and things that happen when there are these huge transitions in people's lives. And I feel that way about these prayers. I feel like I like the power of prayer for people. I don't have the need to know the mechanisms, but I think of it mostly for the living. And what I love about that is my experience is that, you know, some people's lives are very tragic. And when these transitions happen in families or cultures or cities or whatever, when these things happen, I think that something in turning your mind this way with other people can help the social fabric from not falling apart.
Yeah.
I mean, families, individuals, societies. I think we have a need for something psychologically.
Yeah, that brings us together in times of distress. Yeah. Okay, let's dedicate.